As we've showed you, millions of Floridians once again are fleeing their homes.
And many are coming here to the capital region. Dan Levy has been at Albany Airport all day talking to travelers and listening to their stories. Dan joins us live with what he's found out and what they're saying. Dan, good afternoon.
Mark, Sabrina, good afternoon to you. You know, if you were to ask most Floridians, they would probably tell you we're not afraid of another hurricane. We've lived through so many of them, and we have survived them all. However, in speaking with folks here today at the airport, you just sense that they realize Milton is different. They sense that Milton is no ordinary hurricane. If you were to bump into 10,000 different travelers at Albany Airport, you would hear 10,000 different stories about where they're coming from, where they're going, and why they left home in the first place. In fact, some of these people are actually perplexed passengers.
I've been living in Florida for 55 years, and I never thought I would ever leave because of a hurricane.
But this time, it's no ordinary hurricane. These folks realize Milton packs an exceptionally powerful punch.
No, this is the first one we evacuated.
And why this time?
It just seemed like it was going to get worse and worse, and we're kind of dead on where the eye was going to hit.
Up until the last 24 to 48 hours, many of these weary travelers had no idea they'd be hopping on a plane to escape harm's way. So at what point did you realize you better leave town?
Probably yesterday at about 8 o'clock in the morning.
And what was it that convinced you?
Just the storm, getting stronger overnight.
The stronger the category, the easier it became to make a decision.
We've been through a number of these hurricanes, but this one is truly different. And I've evacuated 4 times in the past 5 years.
By watching enough TV coverage, it becomes enough to back up your gut feeling about fleeing.
The reason I left Fort Lauderdale is because I just got to go.
Unfortunately, this one feels like deja vu all over again.
First, we had Helene last week, and Fort Lauderdale just had the outskirts of it. But Milton is really going to do some serious damage, worse than Helene.
Well, the folks certainly got the message. By listening to those folks, you probably have a pretty good idea why they decided to leave this time. But what about the added stress? What about the anxiety? How are they feeling emotionally? That part of the story is coming up all new on News Channel 13, live at 5. Live in Colony with coverage you can trust. Dan Levy, News Channel 13. Mark and Sabrina, back to you.
Dan at Albany Airport, thank you very much. Which time is running out. You heard that dire warning from Tampa's mayor. Residents in Florida in the path of Hurricane Milton have been warned to evacuate right now. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis made a late appeal for residents to flee for shelter with a potentially historic storm expected to make landfall late tomorrow.
Hurricane Milton is expected to make landfall on the west coast of Florida sometime between Wednesday evening and early Thursday morning. The storm has moved a little bit slower than initially projected. But remember, do not get wedded to the cone. Do not get wedded to where the projected landfall is.
If you're under evacuation orders, you should evacuate now. You should have already evacuated. It's a matter of life and death.
In addition to the rush of getting people out of town, the Tampa mayor, Jane Castor, said she fears debris left behind by Hurricane Helene might not be cleaned up in time and then used as a weapon by this next storm. So millions of Floridians are winding up right here in the capital region.
This impromptu last-minute travel plan can have a significant impact on how people are feeling, their emotional well-being. Dan Levy has been at Albany Airport all day, speaking with people, gathering stories, and a lot of people stressed out. Dan, good afternoon and good evening. Are you still seeing some people arriving from Florida right now?
Not so much. The Florida airports have shut down for the day, so I think the arrivals are done. But I can report that several dozen flights did arrive here in Albany, and many of them did originate in Orlando or in Tampa or Punta Gorda. And many of those planes arriving here in Albany were probably flying at an altitude of 35,000 feet. But I can tell you the people who were riding on board those planes, when you're fleeing for your life, when you're leaving loved ones behind, sometimes the stress level can be even higher. For many Floridians, life is beginning to feel like a never-ending carousel from which they simply cannot jump.
I went from watching everything on TV and plus dealing with some wind and rain and preparing my own home to like shock, like surreal, like are we really doing this?
For many of these passengers, frequent flyer isn't just an airline bonus, it's a lifestyle distinction that causes frequent location changes, not to mention mood changes.
I bought a ticket about 8 o'clock yesterday and then didn't sleep at all, basically just anxiety ridden, and then from there got on a flight, Baltimore, and then back to Albany home.
When mandatory evacuations are as much a way of Florida life as palm trees and sunshine, it can weigh heavily on your mind.
Well, we just bought this place, and it was our first year down there, so I was willing to ride it out. But my children up here said, no, Mom and Dad, come home.
Even after this storm passes, uncertainty really never goes away.
Did we just do this a week ago, and now here we are a week later, we're doing it again? And are we going to do it again next week and maybe the week after?
At times, the personal anxiety piles up, and it extends to other community-wide concerns.
It's very scary. There's so much devastation already, just with all my neighbors and all my friends and everyone, but everyone left this time knowing there was no option, because we could lose the infrastructure of the area, the water supply, no power,
Well, the folks who fled Florida will inevitably return. When might that happen, and what do those folks expect to encounter when they get home? That part of the story coming up all new at 6 o'clock. Live in Colony with coverage you can trust. Dan Levy, News Channel 13. Ladies, back to you.
Dan, thank you so much.
Hurricane Milton, now a Category 5 storm, is making its way toward Florida. Our first warning weather team is tracking Milton, when and where it's expected to make landfall.
That is a live look in the bottom left of your screen. That's St. Petersburg, Florida. Right now, that area is in Milton's path, and people are evacuating as this massive storm approaches. Time is running out. Many fleeing have arrived right here in the capital region for safety, flying right into Albany Airport.
At 4 o'clock, you heard from Florida residents with ties to the capital region arriving today at Albany Airport, telling us why they decided to evacuate their homes in Florida.
At 5 o'clock, you heard them describe the elevated stress levels they are feeling right now. And now new at 6, when can they expect to go home? What do they expect to go home to once all of this is over? Dan
Levy is live at Albany Airport with what he found out. Dan, good evening to you.
Mark and Sabrina, good evening. I'm not really sure who's credited with saying you can never go home again. However, for the folks who fled Hurricane Milton, many of whom have arrived here in Albany over the past 24 to 48 hours, they seem determined to prove that old adage wrong. They were forced to pack their bags as fast as they could, find an available flight, and then get out of Dodge in a hurry.
They're saying the hurricane's going a little bit more north, but what you see on the TV and what you hear is not the same as what we know.
What people know about Hurricane Milton is what convinced them to leave their homes. Many of the fleeing Floridians wound up here in the capital region.
I'm from here, went to Catholic High, and just came back to stay with my sister for however long we have to. Maybe a week, a month, I don't know.
As long as the welcome mat remains out, there's really no pressure for a quick return to the sunny peninsula. But of course, at some point, the reverse migration will occur. Any concerns what you'll find when you go back?
I don't know. It's kind of out of my hands now. I prepped as best I could. I have some friends down there still. Some are downtown, right in Tampa, so I'm sure I'll be in contact with them as much as I can.
When fleeing an emergency, there should be no second guessing.
We came home and I feel terrible. We had to leave. We're just doing it over. We just bought all new furniture, so hopefully when we get back, if we can get a flight back, everything will still be there.
Everything, including an open-ended question. How many are you willing to put up with?
You know what? 90% of the year, it's just so much. It's a wonderful place. There's wonderful people.
There's a wonderful traffic jam on the interstates down in Florida. The folks who were able to catch a flight really realize how fortunate they are, because, as I mentioned, those highways are jam-packed, and NBC News a little while ago reported that 8,000 gas stations in Florida have already run out of gas. Live in Colony with coverage you can trust. Dan Levy, News Channel 13. Mark and Sabrina, back to you.